The philosophy of the Jedi and the Sith represents two diametrically opposed approaches to the Force, each offering unique insights into the nature of power, morality, and destiny. Both orders have shaped the galaxy, yet their methods and ideologies are deeply at odds. To fully appreciate these differences, it is essential to consider Kreia's perspective, a philosopher who challenged the dichotomy between the light and dark sides of the Force. Kreia, also known as Darth Kreia, viewed the Force as an omnipresent and manipulative entity, critiquing both Jedi and Sith for their blind adherence to its will. Her insights serve as a lens through which the philosophical underpinnings of these two factions can be re-examined. The Jedi philosophy emphasizes harmony, selflessness, and the subjugation of personal desires for the greater good. Rooted in the light side of the Force, their teachings advocate for peace, wisdom, and restraint. The Jedi believe that the Force binds all living things, and their duty is to maintain balance by acting as guardians of peace and justice. This involves a strict moral code, emphasizing compassion and rejecting emotions such as fear, anger, and hatred, which they view as paths to the dark side. The Jedi way demands discipline and detachment from material possessions and personal attachments, as these are seen as potential distractions from their duty. The Sith, by contrast, embrace passion, power, and individualism. Rooted in the dark side of the Force, their philosophy celebrates the pursuit of strength and the rejection of limitations. The Sith believe that the Force exists to be harnessed and bent to their will. For them, emotions such as anger and ambition are sources of power, fueling their abilities and driving them toward their goals. The Sith operate on the principle of the survival of the fittest, with their hierarchy often defined by conflict and the eventual overthrow of weaker leaders. To the Sith, power is both the means and the end. It is the ultimate expression of freedom and control over one's destiny. Kreia's philosophy stands apart, critiquing both Jedi and Sith for their rigid ideologies. She sees the Jedi as stagnant, too reliant on their code and unwilling to adapt to the complexities of the galaxy. Their insistence on detachment, in her view, strips them of humanity and blinds them to the realities of suffering. Kreia criticizes their faith in the Force as a benevolent guide, arguing that this trust renders them pawns to its inscrutable will. In her eyes, the Jedi's pursuit of peace and order often leads to inaction or failure to confront true evil. On the other hand, Kreia is equally scornful of the Sith. While she acknowledges their strength and willingness to seize power, she sees their philosophy as ultimately self-destructive. The Sith's reliance on conflict and domination fosters a cycle of betrayal and instability. Their unchecked ambition leads not to true freedom but to enslavement by their own desires and the dark side's corrupting influence. Kreia rejects the Sith's view of the Force as a tool for personal gain, seeing it as another form of servitude. Central to Kreia's critique is her belief that the Force itself is a form of tyranny, shaping the galaxy's events and stripping individuals of agency. She sees both Jedi and Sith as victims of this manipulation, perpetuating a cycle of conflict dictated by the Force's will. Kreia's philosophy advocates for independence from the Force, urging individuals to question its influence and assert their autonomy. She values self-awareness and critical thought, challenging her followers to forge their paths rather than adhere to the dogmas of either order. This perspective provides a nuanced critique of the Jedi's reliance on the Force as a moral compass. Kreia argues that their adherence to the light side blinds them to the complexities of moral choice, leading to a rigid and often ineffective approach to justice. For instance, the Jedi's refusal to engage with the dark side's power limits their ability to confront and understand their adversaries. Their insistence on detachment can also alienate them from the very people they seek to protect, creating a distance that undermines their role as guardians of the galaxy. Similarly, Kreia's critique of the Sith highlights the flaws in their pursuit of power. While the Sith embrace the dark side as a source of strength, Kreia sees this as a form of enslavement to their passions and the Force's darker aspects. Their philosophy of conflict and domination, she argues, ultimately weakens them by fostering internal strife and a lack of unity. Kreia's own experience as a Sith Lord and her eventual rejection of their teachings underscore her belief in the futility of their path. Kreia's philosophy also challenges the binary nature of the Jedi-Sith conflict. She rejects the notion that the Force is inherently divided into light and dark, instead viewing it as a singular, manipulative entity. This perspective calls into question the validity of the Jedi and Sith's respective paths, suggesting that both are ultimately flawed in their understanding of the Force. Kreia's teachings emphasize the importance of balance, not as a compromise between light and dark, but as a state of independence from the Force's influence. Through this lens, Kreia offers a third way, advocating for a more nuanced and individualized approach to the Force. Her philosophy values personal growth and self-determination, encouraging individuals to seek their truth rather than adhere to external doctrines. This perspective resonates with her belief in the importance of choice and the power of the individual to shape their destiny. The Jedi's emphasis on selflessness and the Sith's focus on individualism represent two extremes in the spectrum of Force philosophy. Kreia's critique highlights the limitations of both approaches, urging a reevaluation of their core tenets. Her insights challenge the traditional dichotomy between the Jedi and Sith, offering a more complex and layered understanding of the Force and its role in the galaxy. The enduring conflict between the Jedi and Sith is often portrayed as a struggle between good and evil, yet Kreia's philosophy invites a deeper exploration of these concepts. By questioning the nature of the Force and the ideologies of its adherents, Kreia exposes the underlying flaws in their beliefs and practices. Her teachings remind us that the path to understanding the Force, and by extension, the self, is not found in adherence to doctrine but in the pursuit of knowledge, self-awareness, and autonomy. Kreia's philosophy, while critical of both Jedi and Sith, ultimately seeks to empower individuals to transcend the limitations imposed by the Force and its dogmas. Her teachings offer a vision of the Force that is neither light nor dark, but something more profound and personal. This perspective challenges the binary thinking that has long defined the Jedi-Sith conflict, opening the door to a more nuanced and holistic understanding of the Force and its role in the galaxy. In this context, the philosophies of the Jedi and Sith can be seen not as absolute truths, but as interpretations of a complex and multifaceted reality. Kreia's critique invites us to consider the possibility of alternative paths, ones that embrace the strengths of both orders while rejecting their weaknesses. Through her teachings, we are reminded of the importance of questioning established beliefs and seeking our truth in the face of uncertainty and conflict. Valkorion, also known as the Sith Emperor and later as the Emperor of Zakuul, brought a distinct philosophy that diverged significantly from both the Jedi and the Sith, further enriching the debate on the nature of power, the Force, and destiny. His reign on Zakuul reflected a profound shift in his worldview, a philosophy that challenges traditional dichotomies and echoes some of Kreia's critiques, though with key differences in execution and ultimate goals. Valkorion's philosophy begins with his rejection of the Sith's obsession with conflict and self-destruction. As the Sith Emperor, he orchestrated wars and sought ultimate power through the annihilation of life to feed his immortality. However, upon establishing his rule over Zakuul, he appeared to turn away from the chaotic and destructive path of the Sith, embracing a philosophy that prioritized order, stability, and the long-term cultivation of power. This shift was not out of altruism, but a calculated recognition of the flaws inherent in the Sith way. Valkorion's rule on Zakuul was marked by the establishment of the Eternal Empire, a society that rejected both the Jedi and Sith traditions. The Eternal Empire was built on the principles of technological advancement, meritocracy, and the subjugation of the Force to serve the state rather than individuals. Valkorion portrayed himself as a benevolent ruler, a father figure to his people, and a guide to a new golden age. He believed in the necessity of strong, centralized control to maintain peace and prosperity, positioning himself as a godlike figure whose wisdom and power were unquestionable. In contrast to the Jedi's selflessness and the Sith's unrestrained ambition, Valkorion sought a synthesis, the use of power not for personal gain or moral duty, but for the creation of a grand, enduring legacy. He dismissed the Jedi's idealism as naive and the Sith's brutality as short-sighted. To Valkorion, both orders were prisoners of the Force, unable to transcend its influence and achieve true greatness. His philosophy emphasized the importance of vision and long-term planning, seeing himself as the architect of a new era in galactic history. Like Kreia, Valkorion was deeply critical of the Force's influence, but his response was to bend it entirely to his will. Where Kreia advocated for independence from the Force, Valkorion sought to dominate it utterly, using its power to shape reality according to his vision. His rejection of the Jedi and Sith was not born of a desire to escape the Force's control, but to assert his mastery over it. In this, Valkorion's philosophy diverges sharply from Kreia's. While she sought to empower individuals to resist the Force's influence, Valkorion saw individuals as tools to be used in service of his grand design. Valkorion's perspective on power was also distinct. He viewed power not merely as a means of survival or dominance, as the Sith do, but as a tool for creation. His rule over Zakuul demonstrated a focus on building a lasting empire, one that would outlive him and reshape the galaxy according to his ideals. This vision required a delicate balance of strength and stability, innovation and control. Valkorion's philosophy thus represents a form of enlightened despotism, where absolute power is wielded with the aim of constructing an enduring legacy. However, Valkorion's philosophy is not without its contradictions and flaws. His emphasis on control and order often came at the cost of individual freedom and creativity. The Eternal Empire, for all its technological and societal advancements, was ultimately a manifestation of Valkorion's will, with little room for dissent or deviation from his vision. His portrayal as a benevolent ruler masked the underlying reality of his authoritarian regime, where his will was law and his subjects were expected to follow without question. This authoritarianism highlights a key tension in Valkorion's philosophy: the balance between the collective good and individual autonomy. While he claimed to rule for the benefit of his people, his actions often prioritized his goals over their well-being. This echoes Kreia's critique of the Force as a manipulative entity, but with Valkorion himself taking on the role of the manipulator. He saw himself as a force of destiny, shaping the galaxy according to his design and bending others to his will. Kreia would likely view Valkorion's philosophy as another form of servitude, not to the Force but to his ambition and vision. In her eyes, his reliance on power and control undermines the autonomy and agency of individuals, perpetuating the cycle of domination and resistance that she sought to escape. Valkorion's rejection of the Jedi and Sith may align with Kreia's critique of their respective flaws, but his methods and goals place him squarely within the paradigm of power and control that she opposed. Yet, Valkorion's philosophy also offers a counterpoint to Kreia's skepticism. His vision of a stable, prosperous empire suggests that power, when wielded wisely, can create lasting order and progress. This challenges Kreia's emphasis on individual autonomy and the rejection of external control. Valkorion's philosophy raises the question of whether it is possible to achieve true freedom and self-determination within a system that prioritizes order and stability. His reign on Zakuul demonstrates the potential for power to be used not merely for domination but for the creation of a better future, albeit one defined by the ruler's terms. In the broader context of Jedi and Sith philosophy, Valkorion's approach represents an alternative path, one that seeks to transcend the limitations of both orders. His rejection of the Sith's destructive tendencies and the Jedi's moral rigidity highlights the flaws in their respective ideologies. At the same time, his emphasis on control and order challenges the value of individual freedom and self-determination, raising difficult questions about the nature of power and its role in shaping society. Valkorion's philosophy, like Kreia's, invites a re-evaluation of the Jedi-Sith dichotomy. Both figures offer critiques of traditional Force philosophies and propose alternative visions of power and destiny. However, their approaches differ significantly, reflecting their unique perspectives on the Force and its role in the galaxy. While Kreia advocates for independence from the Force and a focus on individual agency, Valkorion seeks to dominate the Force and impose his vision of order and stability. This tension between autonomy and control, freedom and order, lies at the heart of the philosophical debate between the Jedi, Sith, and their challengers. Through their respective critiques and visions, Kreia and Valkorion offer valuable insights into the complexities of power, morality, and the Force. Their philosophies challenge us to think beyond the traditional dichotomies and explore new possibilities for understanding and navigating the galaxy's challenges. Ultimately, Valkorion's philosophy on Zakuul underscores the potential for power to be wielded in service of a grand vision, even as it raises questions about the costs and consequences of such a path. His rule exemplifies the delicate balance between ambition and responsibility, order and freedom, offering a compelling, if controversial, alternative to the philosophies of the Jedi and Sith. The interplay of philosophies between the Jedi, Sith, Kreia, and Valkorion introduces a complex narrative of power, morality, and autonomy. While Kreia and Valkorion both critique the rigid dichotomy of Jedi and Sith teachings, their conclusions diverge. Kreia seeks liberation from the Force's manipulation, advocating for individual autonomy and self-determination. Valkorion, on the other hand, desires ultimate control, using the Force as a means to assert his will upon the galaxy. Each of these perspectives illuminates different dimensions of the Jedi-Sith conflict and presents alternative paths that challenge the binary nature of their ideologies. Valkorion's vision for the eternal empire on Zakuul was grandiose, yet it also carried an undercurrent of cynicism. He viewed the Jedi as idealistic fools and the Sith as slaves to their destructive passions, both trapped by their adherence to the Force's influence. In response, he crafted a system that he believed would stand the test of time, a monument to his power and vision. This system, however, relied on the suppression of individual agency. The Eternal Empire was built upon the premise that the masses required a singular, unassailable leader to guide them toward prosperity and enlightenment. Valkorion's subjects were given stability and prosperity, but at the cost of freedom and autonomy. Kreia would likely regard this as a profound failing. For her, the denial of agency is the greatest betrayal, whether it comes from the Force itself or from a ruler like Valkorion. In Kreia's eyes, true strength lies not in the consolidation of power or the construction of an empire, but in the ability of individuals to choose their paths free from manipulation. Her teachings focus on challenging assumptions, fostering critical thought, and empowering others to reject the deterministic grip of the Force. She sees wisdom in the struggle for independence, even if it means embracing uncertainty and hardship. Both Kreia and Valkorion disdain the Sith's cycle of destruction and the Jedi's often paralyzing moral absolutism, but they embody fundamentally different solutions. Kreia's philosophy is one of decentralization. She believes in the potential of every individual to carve out their destiny. Her perspective suggests that centralized power, whether in the form of a government, an order, or the Force itself, inevitably leads to tyranny and stagnation. Valkorion's philosophy, however, is rooted in the belief that order and progress require a central, authoritative figure capable of shaping the galaxy according to a coherent, long-term vision. Valkorion's authoritarian approach reveals a deeply pragmatic understanding of power. He believed that the galaxy's inherent chaos could only be tamed through unyielding control. His leadership on Zakuul exemplified this. He offered his people technological innovation, a robust military, and a prosperous society, but all under his absolute rule. By doing so, Valkorion created an empire that was largely insulated from the Jedi-Sith conflict, carving out a unique place in the galaxy's history. This raises a philosophical tension. Is it better to have a stable and prosperous society under an authoritarian regime, or to embrace the risks and freedoms of a decentralized, autonomous existence? Kreia's philosophy would argue for the latter, even if it means accepting the messiness and unpredictability of individual choice. Valkorion's vision, on the other hand, suggests that true progress and security require the sacrifice of certain freedoms, positioning the ruler as a necessary arbiter of order. The Jedi and Sith are often seen as opposing forces in a binary struggle, yet both are deeply enmeshed in their relationship with the Force. The Jedi, in their pursuit of harmony, submit to the will of the Force, striving to align their actions with what they perceive as its greater plan. The Sith, conversely, seek to dominate the Force, using its power to impose their will. Kreia and Valkorion each critique these positions, but from vastly different angles. Kreia sees both submission and domination as forms of enslavement, while Valkorion sees domination as the only way to transcend the limitations imposed by the Force. Valkorion's critique of the Jedi and Sith also extends to their respective understandings of morality. The Jedi's commitment to peace and the Sith's embrace of passion are, to him, two sides of the same flawed coin. He dismisses the Jedi's reluctance to engage in morally ambiguous actions as weakness, while viewing the Sith's hedonistic pursuit of power as short-sighted. His philosophy aims to transcend these moral constraints, focusing instead on what he perceives as the greater good, the establishment of a lasting empire. However, the costs of Valkorion's vision cannot be overlooked. His disregard for individual autonomy and his reliance on manipulation and control reveal the darker aspects of his philosophy. His rule was marked by the suppression of dissent and the use of his children and followers as pawns in his schemes. This echoes Kreia's warnings about the dangers of centralizing power, whether in the hands of a ruler or the Force itself. For Kreia, the pursuit of autonomy and the rejection of manipulation are paramount, even if they come at great personal or societal cost. In the end, both Valkorion and Kreia offer compelling alternatives to the Jedi and Sith. Their philosophies challenge traditional notions of good and evil, order and chaos, and power and freedom, yet their differences highlight the complexity of these concepts. Kreia's focus on individual agency and critical thought stands in stark contrast to Valkorion's authoritarian vision of stability and progress. Together, they provide a richer understanding of the philosophical landscape that underpins the Star Wars universe, offering insights into the enduring questions of power, morality, and destiny. The philosophies of the Jedi, Sith, Kreia, and Valkorion create a dynamic spectrum of beliefs about the Force and its role in shaping individuals and societies. Kreia's and Valkorion's critiques of the traditional Force orders reveal not only their flaws but also alternative approaches to understanding power and destiny. As Valkorion attempted to transcend the Jedi-Sith dichotomy through centralized control and long-term vision, Kreia sought to free individuals from the Force's manipulations. These philosophies illuminate the profound consequences of power when applied to both personal and societal structures. Valkorion's vision for Zakuul emphasized the importance of a unifying force, embodied in his persona as an eternal ruler. His belief in the necessity of a single, overarching authority contrasts sharply with Kreia's disdain for centralization and her focus on individual empowerment. Valkorion viewed the Eternal Empire as a testament to his superiority, a civilization engineered to endure long after his physical demise. This vision required not only immense power but also a level of foresight and pragmatism that the Jedi and Sith rarely demonstrated. Where the Sith squandered their strength in endless internal conflict and the Jedi hesitated in their pursuit of peace, Valkorion sought to impose his order on the galaxy, free from their ideological constraints. Kreia would likely argue that Valkorion's empire, despite its stability, was built on a flawed foundation. To her, the suppression of individual will, even in the name of progress, represents a fundamental failure. The citizens of Zakuul, though materially prosperous, lived under the shadow of Valkorion's absolute control. Their choices, aspirations, and destinies were subsumed into his grand design, leaving little room for personal growth or freedom. Kreia might view this as another example of the Force's manipulative influence, with Valkorion acting as its instrument, whether he acknowledged it or not. However, Valkorion's philosophy also highlights a potential weakness in Kreia's perspective. By emphasizing individual autonomy and resistance to external control, Kreia risks neglecting the collective needs of society. Her rejection of centralized power could lead to fragmentation and chaos as individuals pursue conflicting goals without a unifying purpose. In contrast, Valkorion's eternal empire demonstrated the benefits of order and cohesion, providing a model of stability that neither the Jedi nor the Sith could achieve. The Jedi's commitment to peace and the Sith's embrace of power often leave them vulnerable to external forces. The Jedi, with their emphasis on harmony and restraint, can become passive in the face of rising threats, as seen in their failure to prevent the Clone Wars and the rise of the Empire. The Sith, driven by their insatiable lust for dominance, frequently collapse under the weight of their internal rivalries and short-sighted ambitions. Valkorion's philosophy aimed to avoid these pitfalls by creating a system that transcended the weaknesses of both orders. His empire was not governed by the Force, but by his vision, enforced through a combination of military might, technological innovation, and political manipulation. Yet, the cost of this vision was immense. Valkorion's manipulation of his family, particularly his children, exemplifies the personal toll of his philosophy. He saw them not as individuals with their agency, but as extensions of his will, tools to be used in his pursuit of power. This dehumanization is emblematic of the broader issues within his rule. By placing himself above all others, Valkorion perpetuated a cycle of dependency and oppression, stifling the very potential for growth and innovation that he claimed to foster. Kreia's teachings, in contrast, emphasize the value of struggle and self-discovery. She believes that true strength comes from confronting challenges and making difficult choices, not from reliance on external authority or the Force. Her philosophy encourages individuals to question their beliefs, challenge their limitations, and seek their path. This perspective offers a stark contrast to Valkorion's paternalistic approach, which seeks to shield his subjects from the uncertainties of life by imposing his vision upon them. Despite their differences, both Kreia and Valkorion highlight the limitations of the Jedi and Sith. The Jedi's adherence to their code often leads to stagnation, while the Sith's obsession with power results in self-destruction. Kreia's and Valkorion's philosophies challenge these extremes, offering alternative paths that emphasize different aspects of the Force and its role in the galaxy. Kreia's focus on individual agency and critical thought provides a counterpoint to Valkorion's emphasis on order and control, highlighting the tension between freedom and stability. This tension is central to the philosophical debate within the Star Wars universe. The Jedi, Sith, Kreia, and Valkorion each represent different responses to the Force's influence and the challenges of power and morality. Their philosophies offer insights into the complexities of these issues, revealing the strengths and weaknesses of each approach. Through their teachings and actions, they explore the enduring questions of how best to wield power, what it means to be free, and how to navigate the conflicts and uncertainties of life. In the end, the philosophies of Kreia and Valkorion serve as reminders of the multifaceted nature of the Force and the diversity of perspectives it inspires. Their critiques of the Jedi and Sith challenge us to think beyond traditional dichotomies and consider new ways of understanding and engaging with the Force. Whether through Kreia's emphasis on autonomy and self-discovery or Valkorion's vision of order and legacy, these philosophies invite us to reflect on the nature of power, morality, and destiny in a galaxy defined by conflict and change.